Look at the borders, trade routes, and empires that shaped the modern world, and you'll find the fingerprints of a single, highly efficient war machine. But in the 12th century, the architects of that machine were living here. They were a fractured collection of nomadic tribes, constantly fighting each other to survive the harsh realities of the Siberian and Mongolian steppes. That infighting was driven by a rigid system of family-based nepotism. When a man named Temujin, who we know today as Genghis Khan, rose to power, he realized this bloodline hierarchy was paralyzing his people. A brilliant foot soldier would stay a foot soldier, while an incompetent uncle could command an army. Temujin tore that system down. He stripped power away from aristocratic families and built a strict meritocracy. If you were highly skilled at commanding troops on the battlefield, he made you a general, regardless of your background. By tying status entirely to performance, he created an administration of incredibly capable, intensely loyal commanders. Almost overnight, a chaotic web of rival clans became a highly organized, unified military force. The building block of this new force was the Horde. These were self-sufficient, highly mobile units that included soldiers, families, livestock, and craftspeople. To find enough grazing land and resources to survive, the entire unit had to stay in constant motion. When the Mongols conquered an enemy tribe, they broke that tribe apart and forced the captives to place their tents between Mongol families. Without neighbors of their own tribe, captives were absorbed into the daily rituals of Mongol life, ensuring the next generation would grow up with no memory of their previous culture. While they erased rival cultures, they aggressively absorbed foreign technology. When they encountered fortified Chinese cities, they studied their enemies and integrated catapults, hand grenades, and basic missiles into their own arsenals. They also turned their brutal Siberian origins into a tactical advantage. Traditional armies relied on complex supply lines that froze up in the snow, so the Mongols launched major invasions in the dead of winter. They could survive the freezing temperatures and forage for food while their enemies starved in their garrisons. The Mongols paired absolute violence with a unique ability to weaponize their enemies' strengths, absorbing foreign technology as quickly as they conquered it. On an open battlefield, a Mongol horse archer was virtually untouchable. They could outmaneuver slower, traditional foot soldiers, shoot arrows while retreating, and simply ride away if an enemy got too close. This chart shows the result of that tactical supremacy, an empire that stretched from East Asia all the way to Eastern Europe. This enormous landmass was held together by a shared administrative system and a constant flow of plundered tribute moving back to the heartland. But eventually, the sheer physical distance broke the system. By 1266, it became geographically impossible for one person to govern the entire territory, and the empire split into 4 distinct competing khanates. This split revealed a massive problem. The highly mobile hit-and-run tactics that worked perfectly for conquering the world were entirely useless for actually running a stationary civilization. To govern their new territories, the Mongols had to do the exact opposite of what made them successful. The conquerors were forced to step off their horses, abandon their nomadic lifestyles, and adopt the administrative systems of the very people they had just defeated. In East Asia, Kublai Khan decided to stop living out of a tent. He settled down in Beijing and rebranded his portion of the Mongol territory as the Yuan dynasty, adopting the traditional Chinese imperial structure. To extract taxes and tribute from the wealthiest region on Earth, Kublai needed to rebuild the roads, canals, and static infrastructure that previous Mongol invasions had destroyed. That required his warriors to learn how to be bureaucrats within a Chinese system. When severe floods and plagues hit the region in the 1350s, the Mongols still demanded their usual tribute. Starving citizens, pushed to the breaking point, launched a massive revolt. A military force designed to crush armies couldn't stop millions of rebelling civilians, and the Mongols were eventually driven back to the steppes. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, the Ilkhanate faced a severe geographical trap. A Mongol horde required massive expanses of fertile grassland to feed tens of thousands of horses and cattle. But the major Persian cities they needed to control were surrounded by arid deserts and mountains. The Mongols were constantly forced to choose between starving their herds in the desert or risking rebellions by staying in the distant grasslands. In both China and Persia, the physical environment neutralized their mobility, exposing them to famine, disease, and eventually total collapse. In Eastern Europe, the Golden Horde hit a wall. Trapped by dense forests, swamps, and rival Khanates, they stopped expanding. Without fresh conquests to provide plunder, Mongol clans turned on each other, sparking endless civil wars over a shrinking pool of wealth. To fight these civil wars, the Mongol rulers outsourced their troop recruitment and tax collection to their local Russian vassals. By handing over these administrative duties, they accidentally allowed the city of Moscow to accumulate the wealth and military power needed to unite the region and overthrow Mongol rule entirely. Further east, in the Chagatai Khanate of Central Asia, the landscape was perfectly suited for grazing, but time itself did the conquering. Over 500 years, the Mongols slowly integrated into the local populations, trading their nomadic lives for farms and city dwellings. The arrival of the two-handed musket broke the Mongols' tactical advantage. A horse archer can fire quickly, but a musketeer can strike from a distance where arrows lose their lethality. Between the slow rise of local vassal states and the rapid advance of gunpowder technology, the nomadic war machine simply could not survive in a settling, modernizing world. The Mongol Empire didn't end in a single catastrophic battle. Instead, the descendants of Genghis Khan slowly dissolved into the very populations they had conquered. Those descendants went on to shape the regions they settled in. One exiled Mongol lineage moved into India and founded the Mughal Empire, leaving behind cultural and architectural marvels like the Taj Mahal. Their lasting legacy is the Eurasian continent we recognize today. They violently smashed separate worlds together, ensuring that gunpowder, bureaucracy, and trade networks flowed freely across global borders. The Mongols conquered through a willingness to bend their system to every new environment they encountered. But in that absolute adaptation, the nomadic machine eventually refined itself into the very sedentary cultures it had defeated.